G'day to all my friends and family, and welcome to Jim's 5am Club. It's morning tea. It's about 10 o'clock on Thursday, and thank God the rain's gone away, the sun's come out. We've got a little bit of cloud, but it looks like it's going to be a rain-free rest of the day. So let's go on a walk and talk, and I'll do a book summary. And today's book summary is a cracker. It's from a wonderful, renowned author in Brian Tracy, and the book title is No Excuses. And for those who know Brian Tracy, you'll be aware that he's one of the best leadership coaches that you can come across. He's matter of fact. He's got a lot of wonderful material, and he's able to crystallize things in a way that very few presenters are able to do. And he makes a bold point to kick off his book, and we've got the Colleroy kicking off here. And he says that an average person with average talent, average ambition, and an average education can outstrip the most brilliant genius in our society if that person has clear, focused goals. So a powerful point to kick off his book. But he also mentions something else here which is very, very valid for each and every one of us, that in order to be happy, we need to have financial security, self-realization, and fulfilling relationships. But the reason why many people never achieve these three basic needs is the lack of discipline. People just don't have the discipline and follow through in able to generate a level of happiness in their life, because they get distracted, they run out of steam, and they chop and change too often and too early. And the reason for all of this is because they haven't got clear, unambiguous, focused goals to kick off with. So let's have a look here at the first formal point that Brian Tracy brings up in his book. And he says here, for a rewarding life, we need to constantly be improving ourselves, and we need to plan our actions. And Brian gives a method which he calls the 7-step method. And as you can understand, there are probably 7 steps there that most of us know what they are. But it's good to be reminded of these steps time and time again, because like a recipe for making bread or cooking a wonderful dish, doesn't mean that if you've got the ingredients that you can get that dish and make it consistently over and over again. You need the ingredients, but you also need the syntax. You need the recipe to be able to include those ingredients in the right proportions, in the right sequence, in order to get a consistent and wonderful outcome. So Brian says here, and I've never heard of this before, but it makes sense. And a lot of people will probably say that he says this in order to make money, or he says this in order to sell more books or more material. But he says that we need to allocate on average. So, this is not an exact science or an exact number, but approximately, he says, depending on what you're earning, 3% of your income and 3% of your time every day, you need to allocate 3% of what you've got to growing and developing. You need to invest it so that you learn from others. You observe how they dress, how they talk, how they behave, and you try and mimic, wherever possible, the people who are leaders in their field, so you too can pick up on some of their techniques, some of their skills, and replicate some of those outcomes in your life. So investing 3%, it doesn't say a lot, just 3%. So if you're earning $100,000 a year, we're talking about $3,000 a year, and 3% of your time to be allocated to your growth and development. Because he says by making this investment, you have a massive leverage ability to be able to take that investment and increase it manifold in many ways. So what are these 7 steps that Brian Tracy, the awesome Brian Tracy, comes up with? So step 1 is that we need to define our goals exactly and as unambiguously as possible, because clarity is power. So not only do you need to define your goals and to articulate them, you also need to write them down. So the power of writing things down. I don't know if you can see from where you are, but I write my notes down every single day. I'll sit down on the bus, even though the bus is bouncing around and moving around, I will write my notes down, because the process of writing has an ability. I don't know how to explain it, but there must be some scientific evidence behind this. But cursive writing has a way of linking your feelings with your mind, with your brain, with your subconscious, and ties it all together a lot better than if you're typing or tapping it away into a notepad or an electronic device, or if you're just imagining it. So the act of writing, even if it's doctor's writing, even if it's scribble, somehow enables you to mentally grasp it in a way and make it more permanent and more effective in your life than if you didn't write it. So define the goal exactly, write it down, set a deadline is the third point. Set a deadline for achievement so that it gets you to get moving and to build momentum. And the fourth point is to think about obstacles. To think about obstacles that may get in your way before you get there, and to try and plan a set of attack on how you get around these potential obstacles that may present themselves. So you pre-plan, you pre-think out actions, an action plan of what you do if X, Y, and Z pop up along the way. Then the fifth point, according to Brian Tracy, is to prioritize your actions, to identify what you need to do, the steps, and when you need to do it. The sixth point is you need to start, and not only do you need to start, but you need to start now, and you need to start today. Start the ball rolling, and you can start small, but each step of the way you build momentum, and you start compounding the outcomes, compounding the things that you're doing, and compounding the efforts. And the last thing you need to do is you need to be consistent, and you need to do something every single day, and to keep yourself honest and keep yourself moving, because as we said, the most important thing of all is to gain momentum, because through momentum we also build character, and we build interest and fun and excitement. So the next point that the author talks about, the next formal point, is that we need to take care of the 5 ingredients of happiness to feel good about ourselves and to be in control of our lives. And we need to understand that whatever we do, whatever happens to us along the way is a consequence of our actions. You know, whatever happens in our life is a pure consequence of our actions. And once you know that you're the agent for your happiness, your sadness, and everything else that happens in your life, you'll be much happier about it. So the first thing that the author talks about in terms of these 5 ingredients of happiness is financial independence. We need to strive for financial independence, and in order to do that, the author calls us to action, and the call to action in order to get this financial independence is to start saving. Start saving regardless of how little or how much you save. He suggests you start with 1% of your income. Start saving 1% of your income. So if you're earning $100,000 a year, it's $1,000 a year. Just to start from somewhere and to start building, because as we said, once you start, then it's easier to build a habit and to continue that and build momentum, and you go from 1% to 2% to 5% to 10%, and then it just snowballs and just grows and becomes a bigger part of your life. The second ingredient of happiness is our health and energy. And in order to do this, we need to build positive relationships with all of those around us, and stop taking things personally. We need to stop taking things personally and stop blaming others for the things that happen in our lives, and to take responsibility and accountability for our outcomes, and by doing that, it increases your happiness. And rather than blaming others, we need to become a friend in order to have friends. First, become a friend is one of the points that the author talks about, and we need to learn to forgive and to forgive often. The third point of this 5 ingredient to happiness formula is we need to have meaningful work. So we need to go out there and match our passion with our purpose, and to enjoy our work and push ourselves to enjoy what we're doing, rather than to not be happy with what we do. I read a statistic the other day that I think it was either 13% or 17% of people actually hate going to work. They hate their work. And I sat and thought, what a terrible way to live your life. To get up in the morning and to hate going to work. So the way we get around that is we change our attitude to work, and to look for things about our work that we enjoy, and to make sure that we focus on that rather than focus on the things that we don't like. The next point, the second last point, is that we need to self-actualize wherever possible, and to love what we do and to reach our full potential. And in order to do that, the last point is that we need to abandon the someday aisle. Someday we'll do this, and someday we'll do that, and we'll do it tomorrow, because we need to stop procrastinating and start doing whatever we have to do, and to do it now. And the last formal point to come out of this book is to understand how fear impacts each and every one of us. And Brian Tracy reminds us that fear is normal, but it can be overcome by creating a thing called a disaster report. I've never heard of a disaster report, but it's something that I'll start to incorporate in my thinking. And what the author here says is that if you want to understand your fears, if you want to get over and through your fears and to leverage your fears, you need to create a thing called a disaster report, because fear holds us back. But we've got to know, we've got to remember that heroes also have fears. But the difference between a hero and a coward is that a fear, even though they're scared, they take bold action. And action is what conquers fear. So how do we do a disaster report, and how do we leverage a disaster report? The author says here that the first thing we need to do is to write it down. Write down what you fear in as much detail as you can. And once you've identified your fear and written it down with as much detail as you can, the next point that Brian Tracy tells us to do is to describe what is the worst case scenario. What's the worst thing that can happen with this thing that we're worried about, the things that I'm most fearful about? So clearly articulate what is the potential worst case scenario. What's the absolute worst thing that could happen? And then what you do, the next point, is to find out a solution. There you go, mate. Oh, yeah. Is to find out a solution. Find out a solution for what this worst case scenario is. We know that each problem that we face has a solution. Even the worst case scenarios have many solutions. So we need to think solution as opposed to thinking fear and as opposed to thinking worst case scenario. So once we've figured out and written down what the worst case scenarios are, we need to then find solutions, work out solutions to these worst case scenarios, which can in many ways can be just simple solutions. They don't have to be intricate, they don't have to be complex, they don't have to be what's the word I'm looking for? They don't have to be overly complex and sexy. But once you've worked out the solutions to the worst case scenarios, then the next step that Brian Tracy tells us is that we need to take massive action so that these worst case scenarios don't happen. So if you know what the abatement plan is in order to minimize the risks of you having these worst case scenarios, then once you understand what the risks are or what the worst case scenario is, and you know what the potential solutions are, then all you need to do is to work as hard as you can to make sure that these worst case scenarios don't eventuate. And the last point that Brian Tracy talks about is that we need to take advice and take some learnings from an ancient Greek philosopher, one of the ancients, one of the forefathers of philosophy in the name of Aristotle. And he was the first one who coined the phrase that we need to fake it until we make it. So don't be fearful. Just do whatever you need to do with confidence and competence, and sooner or later you'll have the breakthrough. Sooner or later you'll have the confidence and the competence to be able to achieve what you wanted to achieve, and to bask in the sunlight of success, and to be able to reap the many rewards, the many fruits from the trees that you've planted, from the seeds that you've sown. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. The book, No Excuses, by the fantastic author, the empowering author in Brian Tracy, where we learnt a number of life hacks and things that we can incorporate in our lives to get us through the day, get us through the morning, to be the wind beneath our wings, and to help us live, learn and pass it on. Let's finish with a positive affirmation, and the positive affirmation is that I'm alive, I am well, and I feel absolutely great. To my friends and family, stay connected, stay relevant, stay reasonable, and let's pick up a few of these things and learn to not engage excuses, and to figure out what we're scared about, what fears are holding us back, and to build an action plan to get over it and through it, because through action, through activity, we can achieve all of our dreams one by one. So take it easy, wishing you all the very best for this Thursday, and I'll be coming back in an hour or two to deliver another 5am Club on another book summary. Don't know what it will be, but we'll see. So Yassas, Filakia from Jim, and we'll chat again. Bye for now.